Welcome back into the Pick and Roll NBA podcast with Jet and Sap. I hope everybody had a nice weekend here in the New England area. It was incredibly hot, like unseasonably hot. So I spent pretty much the whole time indoors with air conditioning on, Sap. But there was basketball this weekend, and not a lot of quality basketball, unfortunately. The games in both series have been not all that competitive, especially the Warriors series, which is now 3-0. But we're going to start with the Celtics and Heat. The Celtics are down 2-1, Sap, heading into their game tonight. Same exact spot the Celtics found themselves in against Milwaukee in the last round. But the difference is the Celtics have essentially spotted the Heat these 2 games, in my opinion, Sap. And they have outscored the Heat in all but 2 quarters and yet find themselves in this 2-1 deficit. The last game was particularly troubling because it almost seemed like they learned nothing from why they lost in game 1. So I was very frustrated. I obviously am not objective because I am, diehard Celtics guy. So let me get your perspective on what happened.
Well, you can't possibly be objective. You're wearing a Celtics jersey, the full game jersey, which
is just what my body looks like.
Right. Yeah. You have a tattoo, a massive tattoo of the Celtics jersey on there. I can't really see it because it's kind of covered up a little bit. Is that a Marcus Smart shirt you're wearing?
It's a Ron Mercer jersey.
Ron Mercer. Wow. You haven't really expanded since 1998.
It's a deep cut.
Wow. Well, I'll tell you what, when you go to the game tonight, you get a lot of people looking at you going to say Mercer? Who the hell is Mercer? Because, he played here 25 years ago.
I still think he's the future of the team.
Well, he may be, right? Yeah, he was drafted the same year as Chauncey Billups, right? Billups was the 3rd pick and Mercer was the 6th pick. And it kind of went downhill from there. But Mercer was a good player, absolutely. So probably
unfortunately, Tim Duncan was the 1st pick that year.
So yes. And Keith Van Horn was the 2nd pick. We should detail that draft for the next half hour to, again, soak in the memories of not winning that draft lottery. And of course, we know what Tim Duncan did with the Spurs, winning 5 titles. But yeah, that game Saturday, they were a no-show in the first quarter. I mean, they're trailing 39-18 after 1 quarter. You have this great win in Miami to even the series, get back home court advantage after game 2, and then you come back home. The crowd's really into it. It's a Saturday night game, and you don't show up, right? And you're down 21 after 1. You trail by as many as 26. You cut it to 15 at the half. Jimmy Butler doesn't play the second half, so you have an opportunity to get back. You kind of whittle your way back. You get it to 1 with 2 minutes and 40 seconds left, and down the final 2 minutes and 40 seconds, you're outscored 16-11. But if you just look at game 3, the only word that described it is turnovers. They had 24 turnovers, Jet. 19 were live ball turnovers. The Heat had Celtics had 2, and turnovers are bad, but an offensive foul is a turnover that you can kind of overcome because there's a stoppage in play. You can set up your defense. Right. If you sail a pass into the stands, it's a turnover. You can set up your defense. Live ball turnovers lead to transition points, and Miami had 33 points off of those 24 turnovers, 19 of which were live ball turnovers. They killed you on that because that's the way Miami wins. They did it in the 3rd quarter of game 1 as well when the Celtics continually turn the ball over. Miami struggles offensively if they're in the half court, but when they get out of transition and set up their offense, they're that much better, especially with Kyle Lowry coming back in game 3, and he really got Bam Adebayo going in the first quarter, and that was a big difference. It's about turnovers. Take care of the goddamn basketball, and you should be able to beat this team. But no, Brown had 7 turnovers, Tatum had 6, and Marcus Smart had 4. And that's 17 turnovers from your 3 best players. It was a disaster. And as much as they crawl back in the game, they never overcame 24 turnovers. I mean, Jaylen Brown felt like Jameis Winston on Saturday night, right? He had 40 points, but 7 turnovers. It's like trick or treat for sure.
Yeah, it's impossible to win a basketball game when you turn the ball over that much, Sap, especially when you're this deep in the conference finals and you're playing against a good team. You can't possibly expect to win a game when you're turning the ball over that much. And like you said, they're live ball, and a lot of them were just careless turnovers. Sometimes Heat are excellent defensive team, not taking anything away from them. But I didn't think that they were doing anything that was like, wow, look at this. A couple times Oladipo had some strips that were really nice, but most of the turnovers were Jason Tatum's going to half-ass throw a pass across the court and it's going to get picked off, and then slam the other way. That those are the type of turnovers that kill you. If Oladipo is going to strip you a couple times, hey, hats off to him. But the turnovers you can't live with are the lazy passes that get intercepted. Those you have absolutely no excuse for. And that's what was so frustrating. And Sap, I think I've been talking a lot about mental maturity and mental toughness in this series, and people on Twitter are getting very frustrated. I'm saying the Celtics haven't been as mentally tough as the Heat. I don't think that, I don't even know why that's an argument. I don't think they have been, because they let the bad things that happen to them snowball on them. And that's not the sign of a particularly mentally tough team. At points, the Celtics are mentally tough. Hey, they rallied from being down to a big deficit, but they didn't finish the deal. And that's what the most important part is. But in that first quarter, when you're outscored 39-18, first of all, you hang your hat on defense. You say, we're the best defensive team in basketball. You shouldn't give up 39 points in a quarter, period, especially to a team like Miami that isn't very potent offensively. So, that's a problem. And also, like I said, the snowballing effect is like, oh, they just scored 10 points in a row. Oh, man, we're going to hang our head. We're probably going to force something here. Another turnover. Oh, now they've scored 12 points in a row. And they just let it get worse and worse and worse and worse until a point where you're trying to overcome just an impossible hole that you've dug yourself in. So self-inflicted wounds are the story so far in this series through 3 games. And unfortunately, it's the Celtics that are on the end of that. And we also have to talk about the complete no-show that Jason Tatum had in game 3, Sep. 10 points, 3 of 14 shooting, 1 of 7 from the 3-point line. And as you alluded to, 6 turnovers. Your best player can't play like that if you are expected to try to win a championship or, advance through the Eastern Conference Finals.
Your last 2 game 3s, right? First against Milwaukee in the last round and game 3 of this Eastern Conference Finals. Big games, right? Because at that point, it's 1-1. You just won game 2 in both situations to even that series. Game 3 is big when it's 1-1, just like game 5 is big when it's 2-2. Jason Tatum's numbers in those last 2 game 3s, one against Milwaukee, one against Miami, 7, that's 21% field goal percentage, 1 of 13 on threes, which is a 7.6% conversion rate on threes, which, I could do that. 20 total points, as you said, Jet, 7 rebounds, 7 assists, 9 turnovers. Now, I've been hesitant to call him a superstar, a top 5 player, because I don't think he's quite there yet. I think he's a top 10 player. He's an emerging superstar. He needs to clean up some of his game. His idol and his mentor was the great Kobe Bryant. Now, Kobe Bryant in game 7 of the 2010 finals against the Celtics shot 6 of 24 from the floor in game 7. And remember, that game felt like a football game. It was not a well-played game. It was very intense. The defense was good. The offense was not. Kobe went 6 of 24 from the floor. He got 14 rebounds in that game. So what the great player does is understand that maybe it's not my night tonight making shots. Ron Artest is going to hit a big shot, or Derek Fisher is going to hit a big shot, or Paul Gasol is going to hit a big shot. But you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to go rebound. I'm going to play defense. Jason Tatum, oftentimes when he's not scoring, kind of checks out on the other parts of the game. Great players don't do that. And that's why he has to clean that stuff up to be a real superstar and a top 5 player, where he's not at that yet. Look, if he played an average game in game 3 against Milwaukee, you go up 2-1 in that series. He plays an average game the other night, they're up 2-1 against Miami. That's the big difference. That's how important he is. And that's how bad it is the way he played in those games. 2 of his last 8 playoff games, Jet, have been stinkers. Not just bad games, like complete stinkers where they were better off with him on the bench. I mean, when he allegedly got hurt, had the stinger in the 4th quarter, went to the locker room, that's where they made some of their run. And when he came back,
he actively hurt them. He hurt them in that game.
Right.
Sure.
It was almost like, oh, Tatum's coming back. Obviously, you have to put your best player on the court in that situation. I mean, unless Ime Udoka really is, Greg Popovich. Popovich is a guy who could say, well, this just isn't working out with you on the court. Go sit down. This did happen to Will Chamberlain once. Will Chamberlain faked an injury in game 7, I believe, of the 69 final. Lakers made a comeback, and they were getting back in the game. And finally, Will told his coach, Van Bredikoff, that I'm ready to go back in. And Van Bredikoff said, nah, just stay on the bench. We're better off without you. That takes a lot of balls for the coach to do that. So, they were better off without Tatum, because Brown at that point was starting to cook. And then when Tatum came back on the court, it was like, okay, who's going to try to close this deal? Tatum has to do better than that. We could talk about it. He's fatigued. He's played a lot of minutes. He's 24 years old. He's in great shape. There's plenty of rest between these games. I think PJ Tucker got in his head on Saturday night, and PJ Tucker's an outstanding defender. We saw what PJ Tucker did against Kevin Durant last year in round 2. Now, Durant's to put up a lot of big numbers because he's Kevin Durant. He really had to fight through it. But by the end of that series, I think Durant was kind of spent because PJ Tucker's 6'5", 250 and plays like a football player. But I will say this, if PJ Tucker outscores Jason Tatum 17-10 in a given night, you ain't winning.
No. Tucker outscored Tatum. Kyle Lowry outscored Tatum. Strus outscored Tatum.
Right.
And obviously Bam Adebayo was the best player in the court. Well, him or Jaylen Brown. I'd say Adebayo because Brown turned the ball over too many times. Yeah, it was frustrating. Except, I think, everybody's pointing to that first quarter, which was obviously god awful, reminiscent of the third quarter from game 1. But third quarter, Jimmy Butler doesn't come out, with an injury, and you
allegedly
you can't make any headway. 25 in the third quarter. That to me is almost as damning as that first quarter, Sap. You couldn't cut into the lead at all. So you had to the Celtics tried to win this game like the Heat did in game 1, all in one quarter, all in the fourth quarter. And they didn't have enough to be able to do it. They were down by too much.
Yeah, I mean, when you saw Butler's not coming back and it's a 15-point deficit, and you scored the last 11 points of the second quarter. So all momentum on your side, and Butler's not coming out, you've got to say, okay, let's take it. And Jason Tatum doesn't make a field goal the entire he was 3 of 14 for the night. So
yeah, you can't play them to a draw in that time.
No, you've got to cut the lead in half. Let's get it down to 7 or 8. Now it's the fourth quarter. You're the younger team. You maybe the healthier team. You should be able to come back and beat a pretty old Miami team with its best player in the locker room, and Kyle Lowry playing less than 100%. And he makes a huge difference, Kyle Lowry, because he gets everybody in the right spot. I mean, Adebayo had a great game on Saturday, partly because he was more engaged. Secondly, there was no Robert Williams who can match up with him. And thirdly, Kyle Lowry, as a great point guard, understands, let me get my guy going here. He has struggled. But yeah, they made no headway in the third quarter. It was a draw. And now you got 12 minutes to make up a 15-point deficit. Miami Heat, that's tough to do. Just a frustrating game because I think we see this. Of the 4 teams remaining, and Dallas probably won't be around much longer because they're down 3-0 against Golden State, the Celtics ceiling is the highest. It really is out of these 4 teams. The problem is their floor is also the lowest of these 4 teams because they have these awful quarters where they look like a G League team, and it's happened twice in this series, and they're down 2-1.
Yeah, I mean, in game 2, when they destroyed Miami in Miami, they looked like the best team in the NBA. It's like, wow, this team can legitimately win a title, and they can beat anybody. And then, like you said, they'll have these quarters. Game 1, it was the third quarter. Game 3, it was the first quarter, where you're like, this team has no business being at this point in the this deep in the playoffs. So yeah, they're very Jekyll and Hyde, and it's frustrating. I think I tweeted this out, or maybe I texted it to you. They're like weirdly really mature at times and also really immature at times, really mentally tough at times, and also really mentally weak at times. It's like you can't sort of make heads or tails of it. So it's definitely frustrating. And Sap, another last point I sort of want to make about when you dig yourself into these massive sort of holes, at bare minimum, you can't turn the ball over like they did. And you got to the free throw line plenty, but you missed 7 free throws. The Celtics have become a not a reliable free throw shooting team, which is like, and Jaylen Brown is the biggest culprit of this. Jaylen Brown should be an 80% plus free throw shooter. And every game he's missing multiple free throws.
I know
he's
never been that. He should be, sure. I mean, you always think that an elite wing should be at minimum 75%. But 23 of 30, that's not great, but it's still 76.7%.
Yeah.
I mean, that's not great, but it's not god awful. It's not like it was, Shaq's territory or Giannis when he's having a bad night. They did go to the free throw line twice as much as Miami, and a lot of Miami's free throws came late with Victor Oladipo getting fouled when the Celtics were trying to pull off a miracle in the final minutes. So yeah, he should be better at the free throw line without question. I always think that an elite wing should be at 80%. Who am I to talk? My man, LeBron James, maybe his only fatal flaw is that he's a 74% free throw shooter. He should be better than that. Jaylen Brown should be better than 72, 73%. So yeah,
when you're making a comeback, Sap, though, you got to, every point is precious. You can't. Right. And I think a lot of times with free throw shooting, it's a concentration thing. And
It is,
sometimes
and it's
a lot of
fatigue as
players
well.
are just
Sometimes
too
it's
casual
fatigue.
with it.
Right.
Yeah, but
And then
I
a lot
mean,
of times it's fatigue.
Brown misses free throws early in the game as much as he
Mm.
misses them late in the game.
He also misses layups. I mean, we've talked about that for 4 years, that, for a guy who is that aggressive, that athletic, and that good. And I love Jaylen Brown. He's I would say my favorite Celtic, on and off the court. I love him. He misses a lot of layups, and Al Horford missed some layups in the first quarter. A lot of those little things that you have to button up in this situation like this, because Miami does not let you get away with your mistakes, right? We talked about that before the series. This is a very well-coached team. And you tweeted this out after the game on Saturday. I give you a lot of credit. I'm sure the Green Teamers were all pushing back, as you said. Miami's mentally and physically tougher than the Celtics. It's just, that's the way it is. I mean, they're a veteran team. They've got a lot of junkyard roster construction. Butler was the last pick in the first round. Lowry was a first-round pick, but a late first-round pick. PJ Tucker was, a second-round pick. You've got a couple of guys starting in the backcourt at times in this series that were undrafted free agents. So they have that type of mentality. The Celtics are made up of blue bloods. Let's face facts here. Tatum, Brown, Al Horford with the third pick in their respective drafts. Marcus Smart, who everyone tries to tell me is this overachiever, was a top 5 recruit coming out of high school, was an All-American at Oklahoma State, and was the 6th pick in the draft. Yeah. So they've got talent. If Robert Williams had not had injury concerns in college, he would have been a high lottery pick, right? I mean, if he had been healthy,
for sure.
Without question. I mean, Pritchard's one guy and Grant Williams another guy who are somewhat overachievers. But Miami's got a lot of these guys that are just tough, hard-nosed, have played in different places to get to the point that they're at now. So I think mentally and physically, they're just tougher. You even see it like that. I mean, Jimmy Butler was hurt, and we can get into that if you want. I'm sure he was. I don't think Jimmy Butler's a guy who's going to bow out in the second half because he just doesn't feel like playing. I just kind of was playing with the idea that maybe Butler flipped out in the locker room at halftime, and they told him to calm down and sit out the second half, because that's the only organization in basketball, with the exception of Antonio, that has a strong enough coach, culture, whatever, that they can tell their best player, you're acting up, you're not going to play the second half. Miami can get away with that with Jimmy Butler, but Butler's a tough guy. No one questions that. But he just went to the locker room and didn't play the second half. PJ Tucker's been hurt in this series. Remember, he rolled his ankle in game 1, went back to the locker room, came back out, and Miami was able to win. I didn't even know Tyler Hero was hurt. He's sitting on the bench and he's not going to play in game 4 with the Celtics. There's a lot of histrionics. Now, I know Marcus Smart did have a pretty severe ankle sprain. That you could see that from, the close-up of his ankle. Yeah. But, he kind of does turn into this silent film star who there's a lot of histrionics with it. Jason Tatum had a stinger without question. I almost got the feeling, is he trying to make up an injury here to, like trying to
sell
it?
Yeah, weird. I'm
not playing well. I'm not playing well.
That didn't seem locker room necessary. Smarts looked like he legitimately broke his ankle. I mean, that one looked bad.
That's what it looked like. Yeah, that looked bad. And then we had the wrestling moment where he's, jogging in the hallway. And look, maybe it was an ode to Paul Pierce. They just needed the wheelchair. And look, we both love basketball. It's our favorite sport. But, basketball players like to, cause a lot of drama. And they certainly get, this is not the NFL or the NHL where guys are getting teeth taken out and they go, well, we'll deal with that in between periods. I mean, basketball is a little bit different. But I just think you're seeing a more mature, mentally, physically tougher team in the Miami Heat. And that's something the Celtics have shown that they can be. They were down 3-2, like you said, Jet, and came back and won game 6 in Milwaukee, game 7 at home. Then they were able to blow out the Heat in game 2. I mean, they won 3 out of 4 in that stretch after facing elimination. Well, tonight's another must win in my mind, because you're down 3-1 going back to Miami. That's going to be difficult to overcome. Maybe they do the same thing and win 3 out of the next 4 and win the series in 7. Which is, they're going to have to do that. They're going to have to win 3 out of 4 to win in 7, or 3 straight to win in 6.
Yeah, I know. I when I tweeted it out, Sap, just like you said, a lot of people pushed back on it and were saying, "Oh, like you're just saying that because they lost." Well, no, I'm saying it because it's true. The Celtics are more talented. I don't think anybody would disagree with that either. Maybe Miami would, but they'd be wrong. The Celtics have a more talented roster. Maybe they're not as deep as Miami, but their top end talent's much better. And
do you think much better though, Jet? I mean, the only thing I'll push back on that. Okay.
Yeah, from a natural standpoint, yeah, I think so.
Okay, because I think we're maybe underselling Kyle Lowry a little bit.
He's only played in one game though, and he's at 50%, I think. So
no, but we saw the difference with him than without him, right? Because he's darn good. I think if I was drafting these two teams, it would be Tatum 1, Butler 2, Brown and Adebayo, probably a slight edge to Brown but essentially was a 20-10 guy this year. So he's pretty good too. And then I would say that the fifth best player in the series would be a healthy Kyle Lowry. So I think the talent's a little closer than a lot of people like to let on here. I do think the Celtics are better because, I mean, then you got Marcus Smart, you got Al Horford, then you got Robert Williams if he's healthy. And, they've got some nice pieces with Grant Williams and Pritchard and Derek White's there. And Miami, like you said, they're starting backcourt of Strus and Gabe Vincent. That's, two undrafted free agents, although Strus had a huge couple of plays at the end of
absolutely
game
his
three.
three at the end of the game was the killer. That was the
killer. That was the difference. He misses that, the Celtics rebound and they have another chance to take the lead.
Yeah. No, I mean, I get what you're saying. I maintain that the Celtics have the more talented roster, but I think that there's certainly an argument to be made. But like I said, Sepp, I think the Celtics need to match the intensity and the mental toughness of Miami if they want to win this series. If they don't, I don't think they win the series. People can get mad about that, but I think that's the case. And they need to tonight. They need to turn the ball over less. Step one, which that's very fixable because these were self-inflicted turnovers. Miami, like I said, some of them they were strips and they were doing well, but most of them were just Celtics being lazy. So don't do that. Get a better, at least an average performance out of Jason Tatum. And maybe you get anything out of Derek White or Daniel Tice, who have been nowhere to be found. Negatives.
Oh, Daniel Tice has been god-awful in this series, Jet.
Horrible.
I mean, listen to this number that I tweeted out. Celtics plus minus in the first three games of the Eastern Conference Finals. With Daniel Tice on the floor, they're minus 36 in 37 minutes that he's been on the court. Without Tice, whatever you want to call him, without Daniel Tice, plus 44 and 107 lose by a point a minute. So, if you extrapolate that out over full 48 minutes, they lose by about 50 points.
They're better off either not playing him and going really small or playing Cornette, who is, taller than Tice and can shoot threes better than Tice. I don't know if Tice is washed up or if he's just intimidated by Bam Adebayo, who's dominated him every time he's seen him. But no, you can't play him anymore. He's killed you. And White, good for you. I'm very happy for him. He had his firstborn. Like, that's great. But his firstborn seen him play one game, and he must think that his dad really sucks at basketball.
Yeah, and he probably thinks Jason Tatum does too, because that's the only game
Jason
he's ever
Tatum
seen Jason sucks. Tatum. Yeah,
He thinks Jaylen Brown is the best player in the team, and he thinks Bam Adebayo might be the best player in the NBA. That's what he thinks right now.
He said, this guy, Bam Adebayo, reminds me a little of James Worthy. That's who he reminded me of on Saturday Night Live. He's going to the basket like Worthy. I mean, again, old man reference, but so be it. The guy was the MVP of the 88 finals. But yeah, I mean, Daniel Tice has just been a disaster. I mean, he's god-awful, and he is intimidated by Bam Adebayo. Again, as we're recording this podcast, still up in the air if Rob Williams plays. If he plays, if he can even give him 20 minutes to spare Horford a little bit of time, and, then you match in Grant Williams a little bit, then I think Celtics have that much better a chance, because Tice is just overmatched against Miami. He really is. And back to the turnovers, Jet. How many turnovers did we see where they're running a pick and roll and the ball handler is looking to kick it to the roller to the basket and the pass is 4 feet in front of him, that the Miami Heat player just was standing there to get a turnover? I mean, it was almost like it was like a J.C. Jackson interception. J.C. Jackson had a lot of interceptions where he's just standing there and the opposing quarterback throws it to him. And it's just like, okay,
was so loose, so loosey-goosey, not even careless. And I think we've talked about this before, Sap, and this was the talk of all of, Twitter. The dribbling, especially Jaylen Brown's handle, it's like sometimes you're like, oh wow, nice little dribble there by Jaylen Brown, and other times you're like, what is he doing? Can he actually dribble the basketball?
He's not a natural player, right? I mean, he's kind of a self-made player, and we've talked about that. If you took the best parts of Jason Tatum and the best parts of Jaylen Brown, you'd have a monster, right? I mean, because I think Brown is an incredibly hard worker. He's serious out there. You don't really see him bitch and moan to the officials all that much.
No, he's Tatum, like the only one on the team.
He's the only one. That, again, is with Jason Tatum, he was bitching and moaning by the second possession. It's like, come on, you can't use this as an excuse. Nonstop. So if you mesh the two of them together, you'd have, an all-time great player. But again, Tatum's a natural player. He, it never really gets hurt because he's so smooth, whereas Brown sometimes fights injuries because he's not smooth ask him, he's explosive, but how many times have we seen him miss layups and then the turnovers and all of that?
Got to improve his handle. Got to. I mean,
I don't know if that's something he can do. I mean, I know he works at it. It's just something that he's not natural at, but he will put the time in.
There's plenty of dribbling coaches, Sap, who can help you with that.
Well, see, they should have kept Kyrie Irving here because that may have rubbed off because that guy handles the ball
better
than any
the wrong
person
way
that I've ever seen. Yeah, probably right about that, because that guy's handle is ridiculous. But yeah, there's got to be ways to improve that. And again, he sometimes plays with blinders on where it's just like he doesn't see the court that well. And he's essentially even in assists and turnovers this year, which is horrible. I mean, that's just not good.
That's pathetic.
That's never
terrible.
A good thing. Yeah, I mean, that's like, again, Jameis Winston. The year he had 33 touchdowns and 30 interceptions. No bueno.
No, you can't do that. And, it's too bad because Jaylen Brown, had 40 points and that would be the talk of the town had they won the game. But instead it's, all the things Celtics did wrong and Jaylen Brown turned the ball over 7 times. So, hey, they have an opportunity tonight to re-seize momentum. And this is a massive game. And I said the same at the same time in the Milwaukee series in game 4. Mm-hmm. I believe the winner of that game was going to win the series. I believe the winner of this game will win the series for the Celtics. So that's what's at stake as far as I'm concerned. Whoever wins this, I really do believe will win the series. I don't think the Celtics can come back from 3-1. And I think if they set themselves up 2-2, we've already seen they're perfectly capable of winning in Miami. Heck, they crushed the Heat in Miami. So I don't think that going on the road phases them at all. So this is the game of the season to this point.
There's been times they've played better on the road, right? I mean,
sure.
When you look at it, game 1 against Milwaukee was a stinker.
Tatum's best game was on the road.
Yeah, the 46-point game. Yeah, I mean, he had a bad game in Milwaukee in game 3. And of course, game 6 was his best performance of his lifetime. I mean, considering the situation where you're facing elimination against the defending champs. So, yeah, they're quite capable in winning Miami. I don't know if they're capable of winning 2 more times in Miami, and you don't want to get to that point. So, yeah, tonight's a must win. I like them tonight. I think it's going to be Celtics comfortably in a fairly low scoring game, because I think for them to win comfortably, they're going to have to lock down on defense and then not turn them all over. So, if I'm going to give out a prediction, I'm going to say Celtics 106-90. That type of game, a 16-point win and a total point scored of 196. I tweeted it out earlier. I like the Celtics and the under. So that's just my betting tip for tonight.
I like it. Hey, with the Heat, it's never a bad idea to bet the under because they're not a potent offensive team. Mm-hmm. Heck, they had 39 points in a quarter and they only finished with 109 points. That's, you would think if you have a 39-point quarter, you should be scoring in the 120s, but
they had 24 turnovers, right? They had 24 turnovers, 19 steals, which led to 33 points off of those turnovers. So, yeah, you would think they'd be in the 120s. They're offensively challenged, especially if Butler misses the second half and Hero can't find anything, and he's not playing tonight. It comes down to you hope Strus and Vincent and whoever else can hit some outside shots. And, you got a one-legged Kyle Lowry who's out there more on his brain and his heart than his body at this point. So, yeah, I mean, it's set up for the Celtics to win this darn thing. I think the big key is when we hear if he plays, that means less, if not no, play from Daniel Tice.
You're right. Yeah, no, that's massive for the Celtics, obviously. It's Sap, for a team that talking about setting up for them to win, I don't think any team has had a nicer, cleaner path to the NBA Finals than the Golden State Warriors, who are just running away with this series. Now they're up 3-0, annihilating the Dallas Mavericks. They win 109-100 last night in Dallas. And Dallas was up in this game. Golden State never seemed to be too concerned about that. And then in the second half, really turned things on and pulled away at the end. Luka Doncic had a great game, 40 points, 11 rebounds, just 3 assists, which is a little low for him. 11 of 23 from the floor, 4 of 9 from 3, but just not enough. Dallas's roster is it's not a good roster, Sap. And, you saw at different moments, different guys on Golden State step up, which is why they're so dangerous. In game 2, it was Kevon Looney, who also had a very nice game 3 last night. In this game, in game 3, it was Andrew Wiggins. And that's why they're a dangerous team, Sap. They have a lot of guys who can do damage.
It doesn't fall on one player, right? I mean, Steph Curry had a great game 3, but there's been times in this postseason where he hasn't been all that great. Klay Thompson's had some nice games, but then other games where he struggled shooting. They're very deep. And, again, you've got the 3-headed monster of Steph, Klay, and Draymond that have won 3 championships and know how to get it done. And again, in a sense, fortunate because they played Denver, which was obviously shorthanded without Jamal Murray, who didn't play all year. We understand that. But also Michael Porter Jr., who missed most of the year. So the second and third best player in Denver weren't available, and they took care of them in 5 games. And then you're playing Memphis, which is a young team that had trouble closing games against Golden State after finding ways to close games against Minnesota, right? Memphis is better than Minnesota at closing games, but Golden State's better than both at closing games.
Yeah, and then they lose John Morant, right?
John Morant for half the series and Dylan Brooks for 2 games, essentially. So, yeah,
right.
you're doing that. And look, I tweeted that out the other night that Golden State throughout this entire run has been a very fortunate team. I mean, if you want to detail it, we can. Going back all the way to, so many series in the Western Conference where teams were playing without their point guard. It seems like they never faced a point guard on especially their first 2 runs finals before they got there. And then, of course, in the 2015 finals, Cleveland gets there. Kevin Love had been hurt in the first series against the Celtics, so he didn't play in the finals. And then Kyrie gets hurt in game 1 of the finals. And it's LeBron, his second best player was Matthew Dellavedova, and Golden State was able to win. They've been fortunate. They really have. And they have a horseshoe up your ass,
Sap. I'm telling you.
It's in 2019. It was worked the other way because Durant played 12 minutes before blowing out his Achilles, and Klay Thompson got hurt in game 6. So he got to play the first 5 games, and you were down 3-2. But yeah, they've generally done that, and they take care of business. They're going to go to their 6th final in 8 years, which is very impressive. The other 2 years they didn't make the playoffs. It's just weird. They've kind of resurfaced over here. This will be their 18th straight Western Conference playoff series that they've won over the last 8 years, and they've always won at least 1 game on the road, so they're able to win on the road. They're a marvelous team, organization, the whole bit, but they have had some fortune throughout this. They didn't have to play Phoenix in the Western Conference Finals. Instead, you got Dallas with Luka and a bunch of other guys. So yeah, they're taking advantage of it. They probably will wrap it up in 4 or 5, and the finals don't start till June 2nd, so they'll get a little rest for some of their older players.
Yeah, again, the path has been so nice for them versus, look, I'm obviously a Celtics fanboy, but look at the Celtics path, Brooklyn, even though the Celtics swept them, you're playing Kyrie and Kevin Durant, and then you play the defending champs and Giannis, and yeah, you don't have Chris Middleton, but it's still a very, very good Milwaukee team. And now you're playing the Heat. So it's been a much more difficult path for the Celtics.
Sure.
And to the Heat's credit, you first round, you play a team that was they played the Hawks in the first round, right?
Right. Yep.
So you play a team that was in the conference finals last year, and Trae Young. Okay, you take care of them. Take care of a hobbled Joel Embiid, but you still beat them, and now you're playing the Celtics. So both the Eastern Conference teams are far more battle tested than this Golden State team this year. I'm not saying over the course of their existence, but yeah, Golden State's had a gift of a path, and they're this Mavericks team, as great as Luka is, has no business being in a conference finals, and that showed as Golden State's just run away with this thing.
Yeah, and the thing about Golden State, they have so many wing defenders, right? You obviously, Klay isn't going to really lock up on Luka because Klay is not the defender he was before because the injuries have crippled him and age and so forth. But Draymond's still an elite defender. Andrew Wiggins is an outstanding defender. And what Golden State's been able to do is take a player who's the first overall pick in 2014. We could say it was a disappointment in Minnesota. He's not really cut out to be the face of a franchise or its best player. That's not his personality. Now he's the 5th best player on Golden State. He's filling those roles of hitting threes and playing defense. You could put him on Luka. You could put Jonathan Kuminga on Luka. They're just a very versatile team, well coached. They play excellent defense. They spread out your defense on offense with their great 3-point shooting. And again, Steph's not even playing at a high level, and yet they're just kind of sailing through these playoffs. So meanwhile, Miami and the Celtics, if this thing goes 6 or 7, which I anticipate it will, they're going to be beat up when they get to the finals, and Golden State's going to be sitting there waiting, after sweeping or having a gentleman's sweep against the Dallas Mavericks.
Yeah, look at the Mavericks roster, Sep. And I know we've talked on this and ragged on their roster a lot, but okay, Luka, we know what he is, blue blood, absolutely was drafted, should have been 1, but okay, we can, that Vlade Divac had something to do with that, and the Suns kind of botched that. But regardless, high level prospect, high level pick. But then look at the rest of their roster, Sep. Finney-Smith, I believe, was undrafted. Bullock, 2nd round pick. Powell, 2nd round pick. Brunson, 2nd round pick. Kleba, undrafted. Bertans, 2nd round pick. Dinwiddie, 2nd round pick. Frank Ntilikina was a high pick by the New York Knicks. He played 4 minutes last night. So, that's good. They got a high pick in there. Trey Burke, I think, was the highest pick on the roster. He didn't play last night. Marquise Chris, another high lottery pick. He didn't play last night. So they're made up of a bunch of second-round picks and undrafted guys, and then Luka. It's just this roster sucks, Sap. I'm sorry. It's not
it
a good
does.
roster.
It does. Well, I mean, they won 52 games. That's why, Luke, I believe, finished 5th in MVP voting. I thought he should have finished 4th. I mean, there's so many worthy candidates, and he's just fantastic. And I think he's only going to get better. He's going to have to work on conditioning and his defense and being a more efficient shooter. I mean, he's got room to grow, which is scary, isn't it? Because he's already a top 5 player. And
no doubt.
I think the most skilled guy in the league at this point. So conditioning, stamina, defense, just kind of button up his shooting. He's another guy that struggles at the free throw line, which he shouldn't. And now you're looking at a guy who's going to be a multiple MVP and potentially a multiple champion, but they're going to have to add some pieces there. And
I was going to say, Sam, more than that, it's, he can not improve his game at all, which I don't think is going to happen. I think he'll continue to improve. But this version of Luka, what we have right now, if they just gave him a secondary, star level player, they'd be right in the mix.
Well, we talked about Bradley Beal because every team that needs a secondary star, I always think of Bradley Beal because we expect him to leave Washington. Well, the reports today are he's close to signing a max deal with Washington. And maybe Bradley Beal's just a guy who's going to play 15 years in Washington, score 22,000 points, go to 7 or 8 All-Star games, and go to the Hall of Fame and never face the pressure of having to win. I mean, maybe he's just happy
like Dame
there.
Lillard.
Make a ton of money, be below, really face the pressure of, okay, he's going to a contending team and he's the missing piece. Because there's pressure with that, right? If Bradley Beal goes to Dallas, now everybody's going to look and say, okay, Bradley Beal's going to be the guy that puts Dallas over the top. Maybe he's just content playing in Washington, and that's fine. But again, you think there's someone out there that looks at Luka and says, geez, I'd like to play with him because he's such a great passer. And I think they also need some other ball handling guys that can ball handle because his usage rate is through the roof, which is just going to tire the guy out, considering he's not the best conditioned of the athletes in the league. So you got to get somebody that can allow him to play off the ball a little bit because he can score inside. He can score at the mid range. He can post up. I mean, he's got all these skills. You don't want him to be 100% ball dominant because that's just going to wear him out at some point.
Yeah, well, another guy that's being talked about this offseason is Zach Levine. Now, to get him in, the Mavs would have to dump some salary, make some moves, but they could make it work. If he wants to sign there, then he's going to end up there. So that's somebody does that fit sort of what you were looking for as a sidekick to Luka, Sap?
Yeah. Someone who can go get 22, 23 his own so that now Luka can play off the ball a little bit more. Right. I mean,
I think he's good enough. I think that's the type of level, like where it's like, okay, he's maybe not, a top 20 player in the league, but he's good enough where Luka was at this just absurd level where, okay, now you're talking about a 1-2 tandem that's a championship contending team. Like that's the sort of level that you need is a Zach Levine level type player.
Levine's a multiple time all-star. So yeah, he's top 25 player. You want to split hairs, but yeah, absolutely. That type of guy who's going to take some pressure off him. We thought it was going to be Porzingis. That didn't work out. But yeah, just someone who can go out and get his own 22, 23, 24 a night, can handle the ball, take some pressure off of Luka. Because Luka is a guy that it just all falls on him. I mean, it feels a lot like LeBron's first few years with Cleveland's LeBron and some other guys. And he was able to get to the finals in his 4th year and then got swept by San Antonio. And again, LeBron's better than Luka because of the defensive end and just the, pure athletic abilities. He's better. So yeah, it feels that way. And they have to obviously add something there. He's 23 years old and we expect him to only get better as he puts even more time into this. But yeah, right now, Golden State's the better team. Absolutely. Like we said before this series, if you were drafting these two teams, and this is, an exercise we'd like to do, Luka would be the first pick. You can make a case that the next 5 players in the draft would be all Golden State Warriors, right? Steph, Clay,
I think
Draymond, Wiggins, Jordan Poole. I mean, Jonathan Kuminga, to me, ceiling is higher than the second best player on Dallas. I know he's a baby. He's still developing.
He's not playing.
He's not playing much.
Kevon Looney's played better than virtually everybody on Dallas.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, they just, Golden State has 7, 8 legitimate NBA players, whereas Dallas has Luka, great player, but they have a bunch of other guys who are better suited to be your 3rd or 4th best player, right? And I think that they need that second star who can work with Luka.
Yeah, they definitely do. So that series is over. The Celtics Heat series still very much up for grabs tonight. I said this a minute ago, Sap. I'll say it again. I think whoever wins this game wins the series. So everything is on the table for both these teams. And certainly, if you're the Celtics, you're looking at it right now, saying we should be up 3-0. But you said this, Sap, in the last podcast. I thought it was a great point, where it's not, the scoring system isn't tennis. It's the NBA, it's basketball. You don't say, oh, we won this many quarters. You only won 2, so we have the series lead. That's not how it works. It's a cumulative score. So the Celtics need to stop treating it like tennis, and the fans need to stop saying, well, we've outscored them every quarter but 2. Well, you're down 2-1. So there needs to be a massive sense of urgency from the Celtics tonight, just like there was in game 2.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it starts with taking care of the basketball. That's pretty obvious. And on the defensive end, I mean, and they kind of go hand in hand. If you're not turning the ball over, you should be able to limit Miami. They're not going to have Tyler Hero, who has not played well in this series, but is always capable of putting up 20 points. And again, just get out to that early lead, build on that on both ends of the court. And I think they'll be fine. And then we, again, get in the same situation as Milwaukee, where it's a best of 3. And unfortunately, in this case, the Celtics don't have home court advantage like they did against Milwaukee, which, benefited them being home in game 7, but they're certainly capable of winning a game in Miami. You just hope it doesn't have to be game 7.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, Sap. Well, that's going to do it for us here at the Pick and Roll NBA podcast with Jet and Sap. We are presented by Full Press Coverage. And make sure you check out our social medias for all updates on the show and predictions. Sap will be, I'm sure, tweeting during the game tonight. I will be at the game, so I will be nervously biting my fingernails. And if the team plays like they did in the first half of the game on Saturday, I will be the one who's loudly booing the team. So hopefully that doesn't come to that, Sap. But make sure you check out Sap's social media at JohnSap25. Mine is at Jet Stryer. The show is the Pick and Roll NBA podcast with Jet and Sap, and you can find it wherever podcasts are found. Thanks, everybody. We'll be back later this week with some more basketball stories, news, all that sort of stuff. So make sure you check us out, and we will talk to you later. See you, everybody.